Buenas noches,
Good
mi
evening.
nombre es Lucila.
My name is Lucila.
Nací en Colombia.
I was born in Colombia,
Eh,
and
Mi testimonio
and
hoy
my
es
testimony today
acerca de
is
mi conversión.
about how I came to the
Cuando
Lord,
conocí de Dios,
how I
fue un
came to know
poco
God.
difícil para mí
It was
que,
a little
entre
bit
comillas,
different
me
for me.
convencieran de
It was
conocer al
difficult for me
Señor,
to be convinced
perdiéndome de
of the
algo muy
Lord,
importante de mi, lo más importante de mi
taking
vida,
something
podemos
very,
decir.
very important for me in my life.
Ah,
I could
Todo
say
empezó
it all
porque
started because
nosotros con Willy nos
me and
conocimos,
Willie, we got to know each
formamos un
other.
hogar,
We started a home.
tuvimos una hija,
We had a
pero había un
daughter,
problema muy
but there was a
grande, el
big problem.
alcoholismo,
He was alcoholic.
muy dependiente del
He was
alcohol.
very dependent on
Entonces
alcohol.
empecé a
So
buscar,
I started
buscar
to look
diferentes
for
cosas,
different
diferentes
things,
dioses,
different
entre
gods,
comillas,
different in
que me
brackets,
sacaran del problema
different
porque
things that would take me
yo
out
era
of the
una gran
problem,
persona,
because
pero tenía ese problema del
he was a
alcoholismo y
lovely
eso me
person, but he had a
transformaba
problem with this
totalmente
alcoholic, and he would totally be transformed
cuando
when
se emborrachaba.
when he got drunk,
Pasaba casi
and
todos
that would
los
happen
fines de semana,
almost
3, 4 días, pasaba tomando.
every weekend, 3-4 days
Y
he'd be drinking.
Y,
And
y era pues terrible
and
porque
oh,
yo
it
al
was
principio lo
terrible
acompañaba
because at
para no
first I would go
dejarlo,
with him so that he wouldn't go by
para
himself,
tratar de como
to try and
protegerlo
protect him,
y
and
resultaba
it
tomando
would
con él, pues
result
no,
that
no
I would
de
be
la misma
drinking with
forma, pero
him,
yo
not
tratando de
quite at the
llevarlo
same
para la
level, but
casa
I would try to
sería
take him
muy
home,
terrible
and it was a
porque
terrible battle
entonces estaba
because
yéndome sola para
I
la
would go
casa
home by
solamente para
myself and I
él.
would just leave him there somewhere.
Yo
Um,
tenía
I had
2 hijas
2
ya de
daughters
un matrimonio pasado
from a previous marriage,
y
and
tenía una niña
I
de
had
William
one
que
daughter from
en ese tiempo
William, and in
tenía
those days
3,
she
4
was
años
3 or 4 years old.
y
And
la niña
the girl,
se daba cuenta del problema.
she could
Ya,
notice a
ya
problem.
entendía
She could
y un día
understand. And one
escuchó
day
unas
she
campanas de una
heard
iglesia que había
the
cerca
bells from some
y
churches
me
nearby,
dijo,
and she said to me,
mami,
"Mummy,
yo quiero ir allá, yo
I
quiero
want
ir
to
allá.
go
Y
there. I want to
fuimos
go
a la
there." And
iglesia, pero era
we
una
went to this
iglesia
church,
católica,
and it was a
pero
Catholic church, I think.
y de pronto ella
And
la encontré
I found
arrodillada,
her there, kneeling down,
orando, pidiéndole
praying,
al Señor
asking God,
algo y
asking Him
me
something.
estaba enseñando
And
porque
she
yo
was
nunca le
teaching
había
me because
enseñado esas
I
cosas,
had
yo
never
nunca
taught her those
iba
things. I'd
casi
never
nunca
gone
iba
to
a
a
una
church. Well,
iglesia
hardly ever
católica,
I'd
a
been to a
ninguna
Catholic
iglesia,
church. No church really.
pero había
But
mucha gente que me
there were
decía,
many people that
dile
said to
que Dios
me,
te puede
"Look, that God
ayudar,
can
que Dios te
help
puede
you.
sacar de ese
God can
problema,
take you out of this
pero me
problem."
llevaban a
But
sitios que no
they would
debía
take me
ir, por
to places that
ejemplo,
I didn't need to go.
que la oración de no sé qué,
So I
que
could pray for
el santo de
something
no
to
sé
some
cuántos,
saint
bueno,
over
en fin,
here,
ellos me
or
llevaban
pray,
y yo les hacía caso porque yo
and I
siempre
would
busqué
go
la
and I'd go
promulgar.
with them because I always
De
hoped for a
pronto
miracle.
una vecina del
And one
frente de
day
mi
there was a
casa
neighbor in front of me in the house,
le dijo,
and she
me
said,
invitó a una
and she
reunión
invited me to a meeting,
cristiana
a Christian
y
meeting.
yo no sabía de qué
And
se
I
trataba,
didn't
pero
know what
yo
it was
fui
about, but I
y
went.
me di cuenta que
And I
hablaban y
realized
enseñaban
that
cosas
they
muy
taught
bonitas de la
things that were
Biblia
very beautiful from the
y
Bible.
el
And
esposo de ella había
his
cambiado,
husband had
se había
changed,
convertido al
he had become a
cristianismo
Christian,
y había dejado de
and he had
tomar
stopped drinking,
y había
and
cambiado muchas cosas
he had
que él
changed a
tenía
lot of things
y
that were going on in his life. And
mi
my
amiga me decía,
friend,
mira que
she
ese
said
Dios
to
le puede
me
ayudar a
that
William.
God could help
Y yo
William.
decía,
And
no,
I
de
said,
pronto
no,
él
maybe
le ayudó,
maybe
su esposo cambió, pero porque él
the
quiso,
husband
pero
changed
ella no
because he
quiere,
wanted
él no
to, but
quiere.
William doesn't want to change.
Duré
He
un
doesn't
año
want to change. It was a year went by.
yendo a esas
I
reuniones
went
de
to
hogar,
these meetings for a year to
pero
pray. But
en sí yo era muy ignorante
I was
de
very
sigo sin
ignorant,
entender.
and it took a long time without
Eh,
understanding.
Iba a veces por acompañar a
I
la
would go
niña porque ella
sometimes
era la
just
que
to
me
go with my
llevaba,
daughter because my
vamos,
daughter would
vamos.
say, "Come on, mommy,
Sin
mommy,
embargo, a
let's
veces
go."
llegaba William
But sometimes William would come home drunk
allá a la reunión
to the
y
meeting,
estábamos orando para que
and
él
we'd be
dejara de
praying for
tomar.
him to stop drinking.
Así pasó como un
And
año,
a year went
pero yo
by,
no entendía, yo veía
and I
que
didn't
no pasaba
understand, and
nada,
I
que
saw
Dios
that
no me hacía
nothing wasn't
milagro.
happening, that God didn't do a miracle for me.
Entonces,
So
em, ya pasaron muchos días y no
many
pasaba
days went
nada
by
y
and
me
nothing
desesperé
happened, and I got
terriblemente
desperate. I got terribly
porque ya él
desperate
estaba,
because
la niña se me estaba
because my
traumatizando
daughter was getting traumatized.
y,
And
y un día,
one day,
después de tanto,
after
empezando porque un día
one day, a friend of mine, a pastor, and one of our neighbors
Lucila,
came to
¿quieres
us and
hacer
said
una
to me,
oración de fe?
"Lucila, do you want to do a prayer of
Yo no
faith?"
quiero hacer eso
And I
porque
said,
yo no
"No,
sé
I
de
don't
qué
want
se
to do
trata,
that
yo
because I
quiero
don't know
estar
what's
primero
about,
que
and I
sé
first
lo
want
que
to
estoy
know
haciendo."
what is it that
Y
I'm
pasó
doing."
así como a los
And it
8
happened
días,
a week later.
Willy no llegó durante 3 días a la
Willie
casa
didn't come home for
y al
3
tercer
days,
día llegó
and on the third
súper
day,
agresivo
he came very
y la
aggressive,
niña
and my
se
daughter
asustó. De
was
hecho, yo la vi
scared,
y yo
and
me
I
di
saw
cuenta
her,
que
and I
ya no
realized
debía
that I
seguir con él porque
should not continue with him
la niña se me
anymore
estaba
because my
traumatizando.
daughter was getting traumatized.
Entonces
So
fue lo más
that was
importante de toda
that
mi
was the
vida,
most
nunca
important
lo
thing
voy
in
a
the whole
olvidar.
life. I'll never
Ese
forget this.
momento
This moment was the most important moment.
Eh,
I closed my eyes and I called out to God, sort of challenging him, God, if you really exist, God, if you really exist, I want you to change this man or take him out of my life. Take him away from my life forever or he'd never come back. And because I knew that he was a great person, William was, but the problem with the vice of this alcohol that he had was just terrible. And that day, something extraordinary happened in my life that I will never forget. And I remember with great joy. And that was that I felt this amazing peace. And I didn't understand why I felt like this, because I called out to God, help me. And at that point I realized that there really was a God, that God really helped me. But the thing was that before, I just asked for a miracle, but I didn't do anything myself. I wouldn't even accept him as my savior, even. And he wasn't going to do a miracle if I did that. So, that day, William went to get more alcohol. And I said, okay, if he drinks it, he's going to stay there, he'll fall asleep, and I'll just leave there. And I don't want to be with him anymore. But I had all this peace in my heart. And he brought back more liquor, and suddenly he didn't want to drink it, and he poured it down the drain, and he didn't drink anymore that day. So I thought that was strange, but I felt like that was it. My position was I was no longer going to live with him, and definitely I was not going to live with him, and I had this great peace, and this is what I want, this great peace. So, may I had taken a decision, and he said to me, come on, William said to me, come on, let's go and visit your mum. And I said, okay, let's go and visit mum. We spent there 20 days with my mother, and I didn't say anything to my mother because I didn't want to see her suffering. I didn't want her to suffer because of me, so I didn't tell her anything. But I talked to him after that. As he was in the right mind, I said to me, William, I don't want to be any more days with you. I don't want to be any more days with you. I don't want anything more. But in those 20 days, I had to be quiet and accept it as if nothing was going on. And when we go back to Bogota, which is 3 hours from the bus from there, in a car, when we came back to Bogota, I said to him, look, I'm going to give you some time to leave the house. You got to find an apartment or something. But I don't want to live with you anymore. And in that moment, he started to say that his stomach was hurting, and one night I said, it's because he's drinking so much. That's why you're doing it, because you're drinking. And he said, look at my stomach. And I went to a pharmacy and I bought some medicine. And his medicine made his stomach even bigger, and it was even worse. And they sell it out there without getting a prescription. And they gave him that medicine, and all night he was shouting, I can't do anymore, take me to a hospital. And I woke to the morning. I ignored him. I just pretended to be asleep. I ignored him. And when I saw his stomach like that, looking like a pregnant woman, I got scared, and I took a taxi and I took him to the doctors. And I thought the Lord was doing the miracle. He was taking him away from me. He was going to leave home. But as he was so sick, I wasn't going to say leave. So I looked after him. He came out of the surgery. And he came out of surgery. 3 days later, he was recovering at home. And there was a guy that came and knocked on the door. And he said, William Toledo? And I said, yes. And he said, yes, this is me. And he said, show me your ID. Show me ID. Oh, here it is. You've got an order of capture. You got to be under arrest. You need to go to prison. And I said, oh God, this is what you're doing. You're going to take him away from me. And he called me after they went to 2 hours later. He said, they have me here because they had called him to prison and he'd never been before. He had orders of arrest, but he had citations, they'd never gone, so they took him prisoner. And they said that he had 2 years of a prison sentence, that they've called him guilty of something or other. And I said, well, God heard me. God heard me, he's going to take him away. Because if it's for me, change him. And if not, just take him away. And God take him away. I said, oh, what a blessing. When he called me the next day, he said, oh, there's nothing more to do. And I said, I'll do my plans. I'll go somewhere else. I just want to get lost from him. So, the next day he called me and he said that he needed to pay 20,000 pesos so that they could take him out of the prison to pay for bail, and they looked through their papers and there'd be a mistake. So, in any way, they took him home and they put him on house arrest. And the people from the government came and they said that I couldn't let him leave the house. But if he would leave the house, then I would have to go in prison, because I had to pray for God that he wouldn't let him leave the door, because he was going to take him away. So I couldn't let him go to the house. I wanted to leave the house, and I said, God, where's the miracle that you're doing? I said, God, what you're doing doesn't make sense, God, because I'm asking God that he would go away or get changed. And that's when he started changing. He was getting to know God.